One of the worst aspects of speedrunning, dealing with the sludge. These are the bad levels. Not bad in the traditional sense, but bad specifically in a speedrunning context, even if they're actually quite good casually. Typically, the worst offenders have an extremely high amount of randomness, or RNG. It's unfair, it's annoying, and it can be a big barrier for runners both new and old.
Sorry about that.
Halo, the second level in the Halo Combat Evolved speedrun, is one such level. It's actually a rather iconic level. It's the first time you set foot on the mysterious Halo ring, and it set the stage for a franchise-defining gameplay loop. Vast, open areas that you can explore, a combat sandbox where you can approach different encounters in any way you choose, with weapons that feel powerful. It's fun, it's satisfying. But what about the speedrun? You ask any runner, and they will quickly list Halo as one of the, if not the, worst level in the game to speedrun, including myself. I'm here to break down why Halo is so infuriating, so random, and so outright annoying to reset to over and over and over again. This video will primarily be focusing on the legendary speedrun, which is CE's most competitive and popular category to run. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It lets me know that I should make more videos like this in the future. The level picks up right after escaping from the Pillar of Autumn and crash landing onto the mysterious Halo ring. We wake up alone in a strange place, and all of our allies are dead. We leave the crashed life pod and start our journey to figure out where exactly we are and how we can link up with the other human survivors. Which does lead me to my first fun fact. The reason all of our allies are dead is they have some problems with this first bridge. They specifically struggle with this part of the bridge that sort of slopes downward. They can't really stop themselves and just walk right off. So instead of dealing with all that, Bungie just made them dead.
The cavalry has arrived.
The first thing we do in the speedrun is beeline towards this rock. We use one of our frags to help boost up to the top of this cliff. Not only is this faster, it also skips a set of spawns that you'd get if you went across the bridge normally. This is important because our starting weapons, the assault rifle and the magnum, are just simply not enough to deal with the elite's powerful shields on legendary. We need stronger weapons, specifically plasma weapons. But this skip does have another unintended side effect. This strings track, it doesn't end. You see, it's tied to the spawn trigger, and when you skip the spawn trigger, it just breaks the music in the level. So not only are you going to hear this strings track play for about 5 entire minutes on a loop, you also don't get any of the cool music like at Reunion Tour. It's just silent. Anyway, we cut through the hills and arrive at the first area. Oh boy. The first area of Halo is one of the game's biggest run killers by far. It starts off with a small battle between a squad of Marine survivors and a squad of Covenant. On Legendary, we have to deal with 4 grunts on the left side and 2 elites plus a grunt on the right side. First step, our assault rifle and magnum are just simply not enough to deal with the elite's powerful shields in a timely manner. We need a plasma pistol to do this optimally. An overcharge from a plasma pistol will immediately obliterate their shields, leaving them vulnerable to a headshot from the magnum. This is known as the noob combo. Fortunately, the grunts on the left side usually have a plasma pistol. The ones that have it are RNG, and it can be really hard to find sometimes, and no, the needlers are not very effective in this situation, unfortunately. Okay, easy enough. Use the magnum to kill the grunts, and trade out the assault rifle for the much more apt plasma pistol. Use the plasma pistol to overcharge the elite shields, leaving them vulnerable to some quick headshots with the magnum. This all sounds simple and easy in theory, so what's the problem? Well, what if the guns don't work?
Oh wait. Why is he still moving, dude? Oh my god. This gun is so terrible.
Nice tracking, dude. Nice, dude. Okay. In every other universe, you would be dead right now.
is this tracking? Holy.
The guns are the best that we can get in this situation, but it doesn't mean they are particularly good in this situation. The Magnum seemingly has a mind of its own and will sometimes just refuse to give you a headshot.
Spreads wider than your mom's legs in the morning.
Add to that, the plasma pistol is rather terrible at tracking from long distances, or if the target is moving erratically, which they often do because they're in combat. One skill that will become very essential to speedrunning Halo CE is knowing when you can overcharge and when you just need to sit there and wait for them to stop moving. And it's specifically because of this entire first area. If the elite is moving horizontal or diagonal or just going crazy, it ain't gonna track. It's not uncommon to just lose a bunch of time in this section just because the guns are bad. Okay. After dealing with the enemies, we need to deal with the Marines. Yeah, it's actually much faster to just straight up kill them. Reason being, they talk. Way too much.
It's a mess, sir.
Not only is this raw time loss for each of the 6 remaining dropships, it also makes an upcoming trick called drop skip completely impossible. Fortunately, we don't need to kill them all. We can leave one alive and it will still skip the dialogue. But how we kill the Marines is very, very important. We do not want angry Marines on Legendary.
What's wrong with you?
You see, on the Legendary difficulty, the Marine aggro timer takes a very long time to tick down to 0. So essentially, if we get Marine aggro, we have it for the rest of the level, which just makes some upcoming sections extremely inconsistent and honestly, just plain slow. Okay, unless this strat works, but it doesn't work, it never works, ignore it. Anyway, we need to kill the Marines in a way that doesn't cause them to get mad at us. This is where grenades come in. Grenades give the least amount of aggro compared to just gunning them down, because grenades are considered more accidental kills. So we need to kill the Marines with grenades, but typically the Marines are scattered about in random spots because they just got done fighting a squad of Covenant. Add to that, we're on a timer. The second ship, it's coming in, and things will very quickly get out of hand if we don't get over there in time. Sometimes the Marines are all just hiding, scattered about in the worst ways possible, making it very difficult to get a well-placed grenade on them. To make matters worse, you also need grenades. Ideally, you want at least 3 frags and 2 plasmas approaching this second ship. So if Marines are bobbing and weaving, avoiding your nades, you can't just keep throwing them, you need them. We have labbed out some clever strats, such as using the concept of more forgiving in-combat kills, which are considered more accidental, and also unwitnessed kills, where if no Marine actually witnesses a kill, you don't accumulate any aggro. But still, these Marines are easily the biggest run killer on this level. If you get unlucky, it's very often a reset. Oh, I have another fun fact, by the way. So if you headshot the crewman, specifically the crewman, the game does not actually count them as dead. I'm serious. They do a weird animation, then lie there still death gripping their pistol, but the game doesn't actually consider them dead. So you do have to be a bit careful about not headshotting the crewman. A runner by the name of Sloth actually just lost a run to this the other day.
Holding his pistol, I can't get the ammo. I can get this guy's ammo. My only assumption is the jackals headshot him before my nade went off. This game is so bad.
Alright, so we finally get through that first section, spawn kill all the enemies on the second ship. It's not smooth sailing from here though. We still have another trick called drop skip to contend with. What is drop skip and how does it work? There's an extremely small window where if you kill the enemies on the 3rd and 4th dropships fast enough, we actually skip the 5th dropship. It never flies in and the game just moves on to the final dropship. This is a pretty big time save. The mechanics are actually rather simple. The 3rd and the 5th dropships actually share the same ship identifier in the game's code. Once the 3rd dropship flies far enough away, the game will delete the dropship object in order to free up game resources. But if we spawn in the 5th dropship before this delete occurs, the game gets a little confused. The scripts, they overlap in a very unintended way. To better explain this, I instantly killed all the enemies on the 3rd and 4th dropships using cheats. Now we can very clearly clearly see what's happening. The 5th dropship spawns in, causing the 3rd dropship to instantly despawn because of their shared ship identifiers. However, as a side effect, the 5th dropship actually takes on the 3rd ship's ending animation. This includes the delete call, which also deletes all the enemies inside it. That's what causes the final dropship to just instantly spawn in and saves a whopping 20 to 25 seconds. I'm sorry to say though, the timing to hit dropskip is not actually this forgiving once you turn off the cheats. The window to hit this trick is actually very tight. You need to kill the enemies right away, like almost as soon as their feet touch the ground. Any deviation and the trick won't work. The game will spawn in the next dropship when 2 or fewer enemies remain. So, with some well-placed grenades, we can spawn kill the enemies as they disembark and then clean up any stragglers, as long as there's only 2 or less. There is a slight problem with this though. Allow me to introduce you to begin_random. What if I told you the order the Covenant exit the Spirit dropships is completely random? This is begin random. Anything within this envelope is executed in a completely random order. In this case, it's the vehicle unload calls, which tell the enemies to exit the Spirit dropship. It randomizes every seat, even if they're empty. What this means is you can throw your grenades at the same exact spot at the same exact time, but still get a different result every single time. This is nightmarish for a trick like dropskip. The window to hit this is already extremely tight. If we get unlucky, we just don't get it. The 5th dropship is also the hardest dropship as well. It drops off a bunch of enemies. Most runners will honestly just reset if they don't hit it. It gets worse. There's another fun side effect of begin random. Sometimes grunts can just teleport into the sky. It's something to do with their flipping animation and the order its neighbor gets out. It's weird. It'll probably kill your run at some point. If you manage to make it through it all though, if you see this last ship, you can breathe a sigh of relief. You've made it through the gauntlet. All you have to do now is headshot some grunts, overcharge and stick a single elite, and kill that final jackal. Your reward, that sweet, sweet sound. And now it's time for the most exciting part of the level.
This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it, so it must lead somewhere.
So now that we've made our way through the completely natural formation, it's time for the open area section of the level. This part features 3 unique areas, each of which has a squad of Marines to save and an army of Covenant to kill. Casually, this is one of the coolest parts of the game. As a kid, I always loved just driving around, exploring to try and find and rescue my allies. Oh right, speedrun strat. So this section was designed such that you can complete these areas in any order you choose. An area is marked complete when all the Covenant are dead or you fail and all the Marines die. Well, there is a lot of Covenant and there's not very many Marines. So the speedrun strat is to kill your allies. Again, there is a catch though. Whichever area you complete last, you must also kill all the Covenant in that area. Reason being, Echo 419 won't extract you and end the level until you do so. The optimal order is first Cliff, making sure to pick up a sniper rifle and some extra grenades on the way, then Rubble, and finally River. River has the least amount of enemies overall, so it's fastest to save it for last. Let's talk about the first area, Cliff. There's actually not all that much to say about it. It's by far the most consistent part of the level, well, not counting the driving at least. You simply fling yourself into the structure and throw a couple grenades. This usually kills all the Marines, and if not, the Jackals on the other side will usually make short work of any stragglers. Then you make your way back to the hog and move on. This is actually easy and rather consistent, well, most of the time.
Look at that strafe. Do you see that strafe?
After leaving Cliff,
Okay, Bungie. Okay.
after leaving Cliff,
Okay, Bungie. Okay.
After leaving Cliff, we move on to Rubble. There's a few outcomes that can happen here, some ideal and some not so ideal. Here's what we want to happen. We drive into Rubble, the Marines are already in combat with the Covenant. We quickly get out, snipe the 3 Marines up top, and drive away, hitting a required trigger on the way. Covenant will clean up the remaining 4 Marines left inside for us. Why do we specifically need the Marines in combat with the Covenant first? Well, because they don't get as angry at us for killing them if they're in combat. They consider it more accidental, same as the grenade kills. If we try to kill these Marines up top before they are in combat, we are guaranteed to get angry Marines every single time. This has some distinct disadvantages. Angry Marines in Rubble are actually much better than their non-angry counterparts. Yeah, the Marines that are mad at you are actually better in combat, but we need them to die here. In addition, if we just snipe the Marines right away before they're in combat and then start driving, the Covenant can just latch onto you as you're driving away. This makes it less likely that the Marines die quickly. That's a problem. See, once we drive to this point, all the combat in Rubble freezes. Their AI just turns off. This is actually an optimization that the game does. If the player isn't present, there's no reason to have the AI alert and doing things, which just eats up those precious Xbox CPU cycles. So that's why you'll often see runners just sit there and wait. Sometimes we get lucky and the Marines are already in combat when we arrive, but most of the time we just have to throw a grenade and wait for them to start fighting. No, take your time. Take your time. Take your time. Go ahead. There's only a war going on. Take your time. Now, even after they're in combat, these Marines up top are not easy to snipe. The reason we can't hit them as easily is because we don't get something called bullet magnetism. Bullet magnetism is very simple. When your reticle turns red, such as with the Magnum or the Sniper, the gun is actually more accurate. Normally, the bullets are spread out randomly within the reticle. Since the Marines are still our allies and not mad at us, we don't get a red reticle, which means we don't get bullet magnetism. So you could actually put the reticle right on them and still just miss because it's random. And then we have to waste precious time reloading in order to try again. But let's say you arrive, the Marines are in combat right away, the sniper cooperates, and you drive away, slick as ice. Well, there's still no guarantee that the Covenant actually kill the remaining 4 Marines. You're just sort of hoping. Now, most of the time, the Covenant obliterate the Marines. But, you know, it happens sometimes. The Marines just don't die. But the good news is, that's it. There's nothing else that can go wrong at Rubble. Nothing at all. The final area, River. Here, we actually don't kill any of our allies for once. In fact, our first order of business is to drive up to the top of this hill, preferably splattering a couple of jackals on the way, and having one of the Marines get in the turret. You see, since River is the area we saved for last, we actually need to kill all the enemies so Echo 419 can extract us. Having a Marine in the turret helps this go a lot smoother. Our first order of business is to kill 7 enemies as quickly as possible. This includes the jackals we splattered on the way up. Once we kill 7 enemies, this will spawn in the one and only reinforcement dropship. At least it's supposed to. Wait a second. Oh, right. Hey, I know we just got done with it, but there's yet another funny thing that can happen at Rubble. You see, as we're driving up this hill on River, we hit this trigger that causes Cortana to say a line of dialogue.
There are some Marines hiding in the hills above the structure.
The problem is the game first waits until it's safe to speak. If the game decides it's not safe to speak, you're stuck. You can't progress the level. There is a way to fix this if it happens, but it involves driving all the way back to Rubble, then driving back. So what's happening? We're actually not 100% sure all the things that cause this, but we do know it's related to projectiles, specifically projectiles that get frozen. When we leave Rubble and the AI gets effectively turned off and frozen, so does projectiles like grenades and the more sinister culprit, needles from a needler. So if a needle or some other projectile gets stuck in a body, this causes the game to mark it unsafe to speak, which means we don't get Cortana's dialogue line, the reinforcements never spawn in, and River is never actually cleared of all the enemies. The reason driving back fixes this is that it unfreezes the area and allows these stuck projectiles to expire. But driving all the way back to Rubble and back takes ages, so this is effectively a reset for most runners. Why this is even a thing, we actually have no idea. The game would work fine without the game safe to speak check, but well, this video exists. Now with that nonsense out of the way, let's get back to River. We kill the 7 enemies, which spawns in the final ship and causes any remaining enemies to immediately charge the hill. Then we clear out the remaining enemies with Gun and Hog and spawn kill the last last reinforcements to finally end the level. Seems straightforward, and it is for the most part. There's realistically 3 things that can go wrong. The first, you leave too many elites alive and they all charge the hill. It's likely that even with support from the turret, they'll just overwhelm you. So you want to make sure a few elites are included in those 7 enemies you kill. The second, everything hides. There's just trees and rocks, and sometimes enemies just hide behind them and you can't really get a beat on them. This extends even further to you needing to hunt down some grunt or jackal hiding somewhere even after everything else is dead. The final, much funnier meme is the Marine on the turret just being desperate to talk to you. When you drive to the top of this hill, one of the Marines is scripted to talk to you.
You're a sight for sore eyes, Chief. We're in a bad way. We've got wounded here.
If he gets in the turret without talking to you, there's a chance he'll just turn the turret towards you and just stare at you because he wants to talk to you. Sometimes he'll continue to do this despite Covenant literally shooting him. He'll just stare at you until he dies. You can mitigate this by accidentally running him over and getting a different Marine in the turret. Just be careful not to get aggro. You can also get the dialogue line before he jumps in the turret, which requires some finesse, or just keeping close to him, and sometimes he'll just remember there's like a war going on and they're shooting, you know, do his job. But once we hear that sweet, sweet sound. No, not that one. That's the one. We're well on our way from one of the worst speedrun levels to one of the best in the whole franchise. All we have to do is get in the final Pelican and fly away. This level sucks.